The Buddha was a very sensitive being from the very birth. Therefore, before his enlightenment, he was highly moved, deeply moved by the suffering that all beings are undergoing. Every being before enlightenment undergoes suffering to a lesser or a higher degree. Different beings suffer at different levels, at different degrees. As Buddha was highly moved by the suffering of all beings, he wanted to find out a technique of ending suffering. That is why he left the luxuries of the royal palace and became a recluse to find out a technique of ending suffering. There was a belief, a traditional belief at that time, that when one gets enlightened, one can end all suffering. He wanted to find out that technique by listening to the learned teachers in his time, the great sages who were well versed in the traditional knowledge. And for nearly 7 years, he tried to get enlightened, as it was found in the tradition that one can become a Buddha, an enlightened one. But he couldn't get enlightened by following the traditional techniques taught by the religious teachers of his time. Therefore, through his own effort, through his own intelligence, through his own wisdom, he found a supreme technique of ending all suffering. Although I use the word suffering, the word used by the Buddha to denote what he realized by enlightenment is not suffering only. Suffering is only a part of what we call dukkha. Dukkha, the word, Pali word used by the Buddha, had a wider meaning than suffering, even though suffering is also included in that wider meaning. The basic meaning of the word is transformation, changing. The transformation of everything in this universe is caused by the universal energy. Everything in this universe, every item in this universe, whether it's a multi-galaxy, a sun or a star, or a planet, or the earth, or an atom or a subatomical particle, everything is created by the universal energy. The basic nature of the universal energy is dynamism, dynamic, active, creativity. Creative. Creative means changing the form, transformation. It was this transformation of the universal energy that the Buddha referred to as dukkha. In that transformation, it is the form that gets transformed. the baby get transformed into a youth or a damsel. That person can get transformed into a matured person, then an old person, then a sick person, then a dead body. That is transformation. The day gets transformed into night, the night gets transformed into day. Everything is getting transformed throughout the universe constantly. It is this transformation that the Buddha referred to as dukkha. But he emphasized in the transformation of the mind from its original blissful state into a sorrowful state of suffering. Buddha realized at the basis of our suffering mind there is a perfectly blissful state that he referred to as Nirvana in Sanskrit, Nibbana in Pali. That is the supreme bliss that one can realize by enlightenment. Realization of the supreme bliss within us means the ending of all mental suffering. Even though there is a complete ending of mental suffering at the enlightenment, the bodily suffering, the suffering of the body, the physical form that we are born with, continue after its final stage called death. Therefore, even an enlightened one, even though the enlightened one is free in the mind from all mental suffering, the body has inherited the natural decay, sickness and death. Buddha referred to that also as suffering. In his very first sermon he said, birth is also suffering, because the basic nature of suffering, as I mentioned, is transformation. Birth is a transformation. The egg can turn into a chick by birth. That means it gets changed, got transformed. Then decay, old age, there is a transformation of the body. Sickness, there is a transformation of the body. Then, Piehi Vipayugo Dukkho, when we are departed, when the pleasant ones have departed, when somebody that we love dies, there is suffering in our mind. If you get associated with the unpleasant, then there is suffering in our mind. Those are the examples he had given in his first sermon called Dhammacakkappavattana to explain what suffering he meant was. And finally he said, Sankittena pancha upadanakkhandhapi dukkha. In short, suffering is nothing but our mental formations that we realize as our thoughts. They are mental images. That means the basis of all our suffering is our thinking. Our mind has two capacities. The capacity for sensation, for awareness of sensory signals. That is natural. The eye can see is not what we do. That is what happens to the eye naturally. The ear can hear. It is a natural phenomenon. The nose can smell. The tongue can taste. The body can touch. They are natural phenomena. Not what we do, but what happens naturally. But thinking is our own activity. Sensation is a natural response. thinking is an intentional reaction. And Buddha found out that it is thinking that causes all our suffering. If we don't think of what we become aware of, our mind is blissful. If you can remain being aware of things without thinking of them, that is the path of bliss, path of enlightenment that the Buddha taught. In a discourse of the Buddha recorded in his canon, the Buddhist canon, as Bahya Sutta, the Buddha, explained the short cut to an ascetic, saying, be aware of all your sensations through your sense organs, but do not think of them. Refrain from thinking, because thinking is what you do, and that is meditation. Therefore, in meditation, you become aware of the technique of ending suffering by not thinking, even though you become aware of sensory experiences. And that is the Buddhist technique of enlightenment, and as well as the Buddhist technique of ending suffering. In that technique, it ends stage by stage, therefore it is referred as a path of ending suffering, a path of enlightenment. Ending suffering and enlightenment go hand in hand with. When you are enlightened, there is no suffering, there is the ending of suffering. But as I mentioned, on the path to enlightenment, the suffering ends stage by stage, step by step, degree by degree. In the Buddhist language explanation, there are 4 main stages that are also divided into 8 stages. Sovan, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahat. 4 stages of enlightenment. And each section is divided into the path and the fruit. It begins with Sovan, stream winner, entering the stream leading to enlightenment. That means starting the process of enlightenment. And the suffering get diminished by stage until all suffering ends at the final enlightenment, at the perfection of enlightenment that happens stage by stage on the path to enlightenment. Throughout that stage, the main aspect of ending suffering, as I mentioned earlier, is not thinking. But the mind becomes active. The main activity, intentional activity of our mind, as I mentioned earlier, is thinking. Sensation or awareness of the mind is natural. It is a natural response. Thinking is an intentional reaction of what the mind becomes aware of. Technique of enlightenment is practicing awareness, that is called sati in Pali, and translated into English as mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness, the technique of enlightenment taught by the Buddha. The technique of ending suffering taught by the Buddha is nothing but mindfulness. That is becoming aware of. Then not only being aware, becoming aware of wisely. Wise awareness is, wisdom means the capacity to be happy, blissful. Be aware of things without getting disturbed by them. That is what happens even after final enlightenment. The enlightened mind is never disturbed by any incident in the world, in the life. That is why it is said in the Mahamangala Sutta, Puttasa loka dhammehi chittang yasana kampati. When you practice awareness of sensation without getting disturbed by way of thinking, you get finally enlightened, perfecting the ending of suffering, perfecting the process of enlightenment. After that, no more mental suffering, even though the body may suffer, but the mind does not suffer with that. That is due to our mind accepting things as they are. All decay is natural. Sickness is natural. Death is natural. Therefore, in awareness, you become aware of your pains, aware of suffering, without suffering mentally. That is the way of a wise mind. That is the technique of wisdom. That is the capacity of wisdom. Wisdom is the capacity to know the reality of things. The basic reality of everything in this universe, as taught by the Buddha, we refer to as Tilakkana, the triple nature of the nature. As I mentioned earlier, the nature is dynamic because the nature is active, creative, living, therefore it is active, creative, generating things. But whatever that is generated gets degenerated. That is a natural phenomenon. The creativity of the nature is referred to by the Buddha as dukkhata, anichyata. Transformation caused by these changes, creativity, is called dukkhata. The result is that nothing can retain a permanent identity. He realized that every thought is born to decay and die instantly. A thought is a spark in the mind. Sparks are flaring up, opening up to vanish instantly. Therefore, thought moments are not lasting long. Therefore, no thought can be held on to. Therefore, we can't throw away any thought. Nor can we pull a thought, nor can we push a thought. Pulling is things what we like is called raga in Pali, it is attachment, liking. That is a mental activity. Liking means I like this, that is a way of thinking. Thought formation. Disliking, a thought formation. Ignoring, a thought formation. Even ignorance. When there is liking, disliking and ignorance, the mind is active by way of thinking. Because mind gets attached to what it likes. Mind resents what it dislikes. Mind gets confused by things that it becomes ignorant of. In Buddhism, this triple activity of the mind is referred to as raga, dosa, moha. Raga is translated as attachment, dosa as resentment, moha as ignorance. They are the triple causes that lead to our thinking. Ending of these triple causes, raga, dosa, moha, means the ending of thinking. Ending of thinking means the ending of suffering. As I mentioned earlier, Buddha in his very first sermon said, suffering is nothing but our thinking. Sankittena pancha upadana kandati dukkha. Pancha upadana kata means the five aggregate of a thought. Rupa, the stimulation of a sense organ is called rupa. Sensation is called vedana. Then the signal given by the sensory organs that get stimulated by a sense object send an electric signal through our nerve system to our brain to recognize what it became aware of, what stimulated the sense organs. Then through previous memories recorded in the brain, the mind recognizes the object or the sense organ. If you see somebody, then you can recognize that person with the help of the previous knowledge. Oh, that is my father, mother, girlfriend, boyfriend, etc. Then you start thinking. When you see something, hear something, you naturally, when we become aware of it, you start thinking of it with the help of the past knowledge, expecting something in the future. And all those mental images formed by thinking is sensed by the mind. That sensation is called consciousness. Mind becomes conscious of what you think of. Therefore, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara are the five upadana kanda that go to form a thought. Ending of suffering Buddha referred to as dukkha nirodha in Pali. Nirodha means ending, dukkha means the suffering as translated to English, is non-thinking mind. A mind that can become aware of things without thinking of them. Mind can come to such a stage when it is free from likes, dislikes and illusions, moha, confusion. Mind gets illusion, believing what seems to be something what is not real, though it looks actually real. In fact, all what we experience can be called illusions. All mental forms can be called illusions. They appear to be real, but they are not real. They are only images, like an image that appears in the mirror. When you go before a mirror, there is an image of yourself in the mirror. But that is not you, although it looks like you. You are not inside the mirror. You are outside the mirror, but you see as if you are inside the mirror. Similarly, every image created by the mind is an image of the type that you find in the mirror or in the screen of a cinema hall or in the screen of a computer, TV, etc. No image is the actual reality, though an image appears real. But we think they are real and then get attached with them. That means we are getting attached to illusions, we resent illusions, we become ignorant that they are illusions. That is raga, dosa, moha that get extinct at the enlightenment. This can take place by observing your own mind. Ending of creative mental images means the mind becomes empty of its normal content. Normally, our mind contains our thoughts and feelings. They are all mental images. Non-thinking mind is an empty mind. Non-thinking mind is a blissful mind because there is no suffering. As I mentioned earlier, you suffer only when you think of something. Somebody dies, you think of that particular person through attachment or resentment. You may suffer. You see something very valuable, attractive, and you want to have it. That is greed. That is a desire. And until you have it, there is mental suffering. Both our liking and disliking lead to suffering. What we like can remain in the same form that we like throughout. They change, they get transformed. Then we suffer. That is why Buddha said, liking is a way of thinking. Disliking is a way of thinking. Ignoring or getting illusion is a way of thinking. The mind free of thinking means, as I mentioned earlier, free of its content. Empty mind. Empty mind is the original mind, not filled with imported mental images. That empty mind is the ultimate bliss that the Buddha referred to as Nirvana. Therefore, in his word Pali, he referred it as Sunyata. In Sanskrit, it is called Sunyatva. We may call it void, emptiness. Emptying the mind of its content. Content means thinking and feeling. That is the mind that is capable of accepting things as they are without thinking of them. Awareness is there, but no thinking. After enlightenment, in Pali, there is Sanya Vedaita in the enlightened mind. Sanya means signals given by the sense organs. Vedaita means mind become aware of it. The mind is active. The awareness is there, but no illusory mental formations called thinking. Such a mind is blissful, but even becoming aware of something, even sensation, is using mental energy that bursts the mind to a very slight level. And that too ends when an enlightened one gets in the trance called Sanya Vedaita Nirodha. Sanya Vedaita means sensing sense signal. Nirodha means ending. And you get absorbed in the emptiness of the mind, free of even sensation. And enlightenment, it gets absorbed in the emptiness of not thinking. But sensation is there. But at the Sanya Vedaita Nirodha trance, it gets absorbed completely in the emptiness without any sensation. That is called the trance of Nirvana. Experiencing Nirvana in this, very wrong to say experience, coming to Nirvana while you are living. But once you passed away in that trance, that is called Parinibbana, there is the complete ending of suffering. Both the physical and mental suffering. Mental sufferings comes to an end at the enlightenment. Physical suffering of the body, though the mind does not suffer, that suffering comes to an end at the death, the final passing away of the body into the nature. When the body dies, the ending of suffering becomes complete because the enlightened are not born again. to continue suffering. That means you become the original mind, free of thinking, free of mental contents, free of the energy or force created by thinking. Thinking, we create energy for us to continue our life in the next life and so on. Ending of living is the ending of suffering. We suffer because we live. We live because we are born. Ending of birth means ending of living. Ending of living means ending of suffering. That is what the Buddha realized at his enlightenment. By observing deep into his mind, going deep into his mind and observing the real bliss of Nirvana that is hidden in our own mind, that we ourselves can find out by penetrating our own mind, going beyond its knowledge and thinking that goes to create knowledge. Beyond knowledge is wisdom, and beyond wisdom is the enlightenment, the insight, and beyond insight is the supreme bliss of Nirvana within your own mind.